Now, as you may have recognized, proportionality retributivism does not require automatic punishments in the same way as equality retributivism does. That is to say that specific punishments are only determined when we look at the crime that's been committed and the other crimes that surround that crime on the crime scale. So, for instance, when we look at the crime of theft, we are not told by the crime itself automatically what the punishment should be, like in equality retributivism. Rather, in order to determine what the appropriate punishment for theft is, we have to look at what the punishments for assault, the worst crime, and maybe parking violations, the lesser crime. What are the punishments for those? And that will help us determine the punishment for theft. Um, and moreover, the punishments for parking violations and assault are themselves determined by the crimes that surround them, the more severe and less severe. So I'm just trying to point out, and Nathanson's just trying to point out, that the punishment scale is constructed and is in a sense open-ended. And what the punishments um, are not automatically determined by the crime. Rather, they're determined by the system, by the scales as a whole. Okay? And so what this means for the death penalty is that the death penalty is not necessarily the worst punishment on the punishment scale. That is to say, that the worst crime does not automatically have to be punished with the death penalty. It may be deemed that the death penalty should be left off of the punishment scale, and rather life in prison without parole should be deemed the most severe punishment that is morally acceptable. As long as less severe crimes are given less severe punishments than life in prison without parole, and so on and so forth down the scale, then we could still achieve proportionality without the death penalty. What Stephen Nathanson is pointing out here is just that proportionality retributivism does not require the death penalty like equality retributivism does. That's not to say that proportionality retributivism is totally incompatible with the death penalty. Perhaps it is compatible with the death penalty. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Proportionality retributivism does not necessarily require the death penalty. It's possible that we could leave the death penalty off and still achieve proportionality. And that is ultimately what Stephen Nathanson is going to argue for. So on the one hand, he is saying, look, proportionality retributivism is better than equality retributivism. It avoids the problems that plague equality retributivism, and in that sense, it is more preferred. Proportionality retributivism is more preferred. However, proportionality retributivism does not play into the hands of the retentionists as easily as they might hope. You can support proportionality retributivism and still be an abolitionist. And that's what Stephen Nathanson is, and that's what he does. He's an abolitionist who supports proportionality retributivism, and he goes on to provide two main reasons why we ought to abolish the death penalty and leave the death penalty off of our punishment scale.